Thank you for staying with us for the news. Our very first story. The Minister of Trade and Industry, Alan Kyerematen, is calling for reforms system on one hand, and the country's developmental needs and priorities on the other hand, accounts for a situation where graduates churned out from the universities are unable to find jobs. Mr. Kyerematen believes entrepreneurship must be encouraged to drive job creation.
As a nation today, is how to deal with the problem of unemployment. Available data indicates that every year, over 3 looking for jobs. This is aside those who terminate at the end of the second cycle. If you position these statistics against the background, clear to us as a nation that we have a major security challenge on our hands. Mr. Chairman, while several factors may account for this very unfortunate situation, one can state confidently the nature and structure of our educational system on one hand and our development needs and priorities on the other hand. The question we must be asking ourselves as a nation today, children's fault. We must pursue education not as an end in itself, but as a means to an end. Place in our national development agenda. It has produced men and women in various fields of endeavor, which has helped us to bring our country thus far, and the country at large, as well as many others who have departed this world, attest to this fact. But while numeracy and literacy are all essential to our daily existence, development and economic progress, we need an urgent change in direction if we are to be counted among the developed nations of this world. Mr. Chairman, we need as a matter of urgency to adopt learning approaches that will enable CT, engineering and science. This is where the world is moving to now, and this is what will help our youth to become more employable and compete on an equal footing with their colleagues in the advanced world. It is for this reason that the government's new education policy.
Some fishermen living along the coastline very close to the Korle Lagoon say it has become difficult getting premix fuel to power their outboard motors. They allege persons who are not fishermen sometimes get access to the premix ahead of them and sell it at each.
I just met this fisherman here dragging their catch shoreline. It's a lot of work here actually. This is the first time I'm pulling something like this. This fisherman premix fuel, they say that has been a challenge. In fact, when we come into this community, we saw quite a number of yellow gallons, popularly known as Kufuor gallons, lined up on the streets.
Where you won't buy to go, say, where is no come? When you come then, the people where they top there, only one boy. When you go there, you buy only 7 gallon, it be 520. So when you go buy from different side, you buy only 7 gallon, be 1.3, 1.4. Why? You will not get share. Why you want to buy petrol? You don't go see. The person where they go see, you go the share. You don't get the petrol. Only one person will not go for it. Right now, all canoe you can collect. The canoe to down. So you don't get the petrol. When you get petrol, then you keep that canoe to back after.
Okay.
My name is Isaac Quincy. The premise in Tamba. Bisu Banswa. Wow, couple no okay. No plus no high. Okay, you're a fisherman? Okay. Tell me, what is work like? What is business like? Tell me tomorrow thing.
Primi say we are ba ya onu wanyi oya wu petrol ba ani o primi say na we great never 40 years so ne ego ba wa ga go afogbo emi gallon ji ma mo je follow o le pi ani wu aya.
Well, he says Director Dr. Osei Kufuor Afre is worried about the absence of a secondary health facility in the region for referral purposes. He says the situation of referring patients to other regions is dire, as some of them die during transit to the correspondent Peter Seno reports from the region's Health Performance Review meeting.
The Health Performance Review by the Regional Health Directorate each year is to do SWOT analysis of effective health delivery in the region. Speaking at a performance in the region, he says this is impeding quality health delivery as some clients lose their lives in transit to referral centers outside of the OT region.
The absence of a regional hospital in the region is really a menace for us because we are torn of a problem. So imagine referring somebody from Nkwanta North to Ho, that long journey. So if it's an emergency, I mean, we've lost 1 or 2 patients in transit or on arrival just because they couldn't get there on time. So it's a huge outside the region, but I would be able to contain such referrals in the region.
Dr. Afre also says Kratchi West and Kratchi Nchumru districts are cut off the region by the Volta Lake and the Oti River, for which referral cases become difficult to manage as the ferry stops its side.
So places like the Kratchi West or Dambai, Kiti Kratchi and Kratchi Nchumru, okay, you realize that once the pontoon does not work after 6:30, referral downstream was more or less to beef up the services at Kratchi West District Hospital. Try to find a doctor for Kratchi Nchumuru, that's Chinderi, so that at least they will be able to hold the fort at every point in time. But no matter what, referrals would come.
Another issue for effective health delivery
that the specialists in the region are only 2. That is myself and the surgeon at Nkwanta Municipal Hospital. We are only 2. So if a whole region has only 2 specialists, then it means we have a lot of work to do. The existing numbers continue to dwindle as some Nkwanta North districts are likely to lose their only doctors to the above.
Meanwhile, the Biakuya District Health Directorate, led by Rita Urapa, has been adjudged the best performing district in the region. Peter Sanu for JoyNews.
Residents of Tinguri in the West Mamprusi municipality of the Northeast region are asking the Ghana Water Company Limited to restore water supply to the area. The only facility that provides clean drinking water for the communities has broken down and remained unrepaired. Ilyasu Tanko reports.
It is 8 a.m. here at Tinguri, a small town in the rural West Mamprusi municipality, located about 20 kilometers away from the municipal capital along the Wale-Wale-Nalirgu Road in the northeast to get water. They have set off this early with the hope of getting the water quickly for domestic purposes before preparing for the farms. But even with extra effort, water barely flows from the borehole.
Before you go fast, we are children. The children always go to school late, and our work to the same. Our work to always go back because of the water. So we are just suffering because of
2 years following the breakdown of the only water supply system in the community provided years ago by a non-governmental organization. Leila Guma complains that the scarcity of water has made life generally difficult for them as they now have The other main sources of water supply aside from the boreholes are hand-dug wells and this post-colonial era dam. Community members have always depended on this dam for water supply during a period like this. However, since rehabilitation works were carried out 3 years ago as part of the government one village, but to depend on water from this gutter.
dry season, there's no water. So that's why dry season that we have been coming here to fetch water. And you know the greens and the worms are out of the water. So if you want to drink in the night, or if a small child wants to fetch the water and drink, we always worry because there are some things in the water that we all know that the water is not good. But because we have nothing to do, that's why we are fetching this water.
Now, it will interest you to know that Paga also is home to the Piquoro slave camp, which is a very important historical landmark for the country, although very little is known of it. Dating back to as early as 1704, the slave camp is known to be a place where slaves from northern Ghana and southern Burkina Faso were often kept for several days before they were carted to the Salaga slave market in the Savannah region for sale and onward transit out of Africa. Piquoro slave camp located in the Nania suburb of Paga in the Kasena Nankana West district.
Piquoro is a small area of land in the Nania suburb of Paga. The name Piquoro in the Kasem language simply means a lot of rocks, and it was so named obviously because of the rocky, hilly nature of the area. The history has it that in the early 18th century, this place was a thick forest and tampered with by humans, until one day a strange man traveled abroad to work with white people. Piquoro was allocated to this man because he wanted a place to stay. It turned out he was a slave capturer.
Around 1704, a young man who was a black man came and settled here, and he was not willing to tell much about himself to the people who were living in the village as at that time. So the people gave him a name in Kasem, Bagao, meaning a bushman. And this man, according to the history, he came and started the whole business here in small scale, capturing young men and ladies, keeping them here. From here, he take them to Salaga slave market, where they were sold out to retailers, and from there they were marched through Asimanso, Asimfosu, down to the Cape Coast Castle, and they were being handed over to the white people.
Joseph Kugoramu is a tour guide here at the Piquoro slave camp. He takes us on a tour of the camp. First, we learn upon arrival here at Piquoro. Later in the evenings, they would be marched through this route and up this hill. On the hill, they drank water from this small well here on the rocks. It is believed to date that this well never dries up. Meals for the slaves were also prepared here on the rocks. The meals were served for the slaves to eat in these. After meals, the slaves were entertained in a rather interesting way.
Over here, slaves were brought anytime they finished their supper in the evening to this place. It was compulsory for them to be entertained to make them reduce the emotional stresses they were passing through. These are two rocks near to each other which sound differently if you hit any part of them, slightly different like the traditional drums we have in the village.
Has remained with the people of Paga even to date. These men here gave us a feel of that music. We are also shown this rock to escape. The final point of the Piquoro slave camp is what was called the Punishment Rock, and then the cemetery.
As the slaves were very tall and they were giants, their legs could be down here fully, then their hands would be behind them. So they were being chained against the rock, tightly against the rock. So you were told to sit on the rock with your eyes widely open, watching the sun. And the punishment starts from sunrise from the east. So you were watching the sun as it rises from the east, almost 12 hours here during the punishment. And if you try to close your eyes, you were accompanied by beatings. Many were not fortunate to survive this punishment, and those of them who were not fortunate to survive it were all laid to rest here in the cemetery.
As old as the Piquoro slave camp is, it was never converted into a tourist site until now, are unaware of this important historical landmark. There is little maintenance, or decoration of the site, and no ancillary facilities to attract tourists.
Normally, we don't get visitors. Sometimes in a week, we can get 2 or 3
of the Paga traditional area. He will be celebrating his 50th anniversary on the chieftaincy scheme this year. He says throughout his reign, he has tried in many ways to get the needed support for the Pikoro slave camp to make it as popular as the Paga Crocodile's Pond, but to no
to that place. But now we realize that it's a tourist center. That's why I came out to bring it out. At first, people from Switzerland and other places, they used to come there. They help a lot. But they stopped almost 3 years ago. They don't come again. And they help at the Pinkoro place so that it will go up.
For the Ghana Man series here on Joy News, my name is Albert Sorry, reporting from the Pikoro slave camp in the Nania town of Paga.
Beautiful, isn't it? Pack all the details in them. I'll be doing that with Kojo Poku. Do stay. Ready or not, here we come. It's time for the news review, and we're digging into the biggest stories across the country. We'll be bringing all of those to you. We're joined by Kojo Poku, energy analyst, but also one who shares weekend. I am very well. I'm just a little tired. I was working over the weekend, especially Sunday leading into Monday, working late, coming in early. But here we are. We do what we do, and we love it. So it's all good.
Well, you see,
it's all
a
good.
Quick one. Before your program comes on, there is an advert you guys play. Imagine Ghana without journalists. Imagine Ghana. There's this advert you guys play.
Yeah.
And it keeps me thinking. In the last week, I've been having these challenges with the media and journalists in this country. I think the journalist and the media space is not helping civil society do their work and the things that are not going well in this country.
Right.
But when we do right and we provide these content to the media houses, it's really becoming difficult for us to have it published. If you guys have not noticed, it's been a while ASAP put something out. It's been a while Imani put something out. A lot of the CSOs have really stopped putting stuff out because we realized that when we write them, the media houses just are not interested. They would rather put Moisha Bandon went to a club in Dubai. They rather put a politician got eaten in his village than to put educative content. He's also guilty because your online people don't really want to publish our content.
Well, I'm not holding brief for our online team, though they have their own editorial policy. But I'll say this for a fact. You can't always have all the news stories. You will have some, most of them, we try to bring the finest content. But I know it's quite a struggle for them in terms of these because there are so many competing interests. Within the last week, let me just give you a few examples. Professor Jampo wrote something on the Supreme Court's ruling that I have seen. There's Professor H have written on saying, but we can't have all of them on. But I get what you mean. Look, sometimes people send things to me, and sometimes it's just about the sort of thing that has been put together that people want published. I'm not saying yours, but sometimes you look at even the quality of what has been sent and other things, and there are editorial reasons that maybe one may fly and another may not. But it's something that thankfully we've taken stock of, and I will not say that, I guess it will avert minds to that more, because I agree with you, civil society needs to, contribute. And we are ensuring that you get a platform to do that. But apart from that, any other concerns you'd like to raise before we kickstart this?
Oh, no, let's go ahead. When it comes to...
I have a concern that I want to run by you, Kojo. Have you noticed that a lot of the traffic lights, especially in Accra, are not... How so? Because, so let me tell you, the National Road Safety Authority...
The traffic light caused the problem. In some areas, the traffic lights cause the traffic. There are instances when you get there and the traffic light doesn't work. The traffic flows better.
Okay, so I get it from that angle, but I'm also looking at it from the angle where a lot of the time, I mean, some of the intersections I use, some of the routes I use, and I just don't want to mention for security reasons, you would see that a lot of them are not working, and so you have an intersection, 4 lanes crisscrossing, and everyone is trying to, find their way in. I've seen accident upon accident upon accident happen on the back of these, because in areas where it's just 1 lane, okay, cool. You don't see anyone coming, you move. Kind of like at around the Ponglo, and I'm saying it because they should know, very early in the morning, when you're using that route, you would realize that even when the light turns red, right, sometimes you would have people go through because there's practically no one coming from within the University of Ghana or coming from the other end of Okponglo. So yeah, they can do that. It's done. But these ones are simply not working, and it's creating chaotic scenes. It's actually creating traffic in some areas. So one is going and they'll keep going till the cars are done. Do you get it? It also feeds into...
that traffic light is major. That Okponglo traffic light is very major. And when it doesn't work, many a times when it doesn't work, you get a small boys trying to play the role of directing traffic or the police. And the funny thing is that the police station is just up the road from there. And it's very amazing how they don't monitor. Now, there is no excuse for the police not to see these things because we have these CCTV cameras at every intersection. So they do see it. How quickly they respond is a matter of who is monitoring the CCTV.
It's interesting. The National Road Safety Authority, per its own data, shows that about 50%, almost 50% of our traffic lights actually don't function. Interesting.
I think they should be monitored. Look, the point is this. Some roads were minor roads, and the way the traffic lights were programmed, minor roads don't go on as longer as the major roads.
Right.
I think as time goes on, some major roads, some minor roads has become major. So they need to constantly be programming the lights to make sure that it gives equal turn to both sides. In some instances, look, if you come up the road from there into the Adenta barrier, that traffic light there coming in from the Dodowa road, before it was a minor road. Today is a major road. So the traffic light gives more attention to the main road going to Abri. So if there is nobody at that traffic light and the traffic light only works on its own, there is a backup traffic on the Dodowa road, which is where I come from every morning. But when there is somebody standing there, it's easier. But like I said, the road safety and people in charge of the traffic lights should be monitoring these traffic lights from time to time, monitor the traffic on that road and reprogram the traffic light to give access to everybody, equal access.
Let's look at the Daily Graphic newspaper. Maintain credible, authentic publications. NMC tells Graphic as board takes office. Pictured there together with others. Yabwedu Ayebwafo, chairman of the NMC, administering the oath to the board of the GCGL. La General Hospital construction begins. This has been a thorny issue. It's on page 16. After, that place was razed to the ground. So work on the reconstruction of the La General Hospital has started almost 19 months after a sword-cutting ceremony was performed for the commencement of work. And after signing the redevelopment plan of the project, the minister led an entourage to inspect the project site. It's estimated to cost 56 million euros, and it's a 164-bed hospital project. In recent times, I've heard of more and more people who are succumbing to death and all of that on the back of the no-bed syndrome and all of that. How much of an impact do you feel the La General Hospital erected and all of that? How much of an impact do you feel this will make in that community?
Well, look, it's any new bed, any new hospital built in a community is good news. I only just flinch a little bit when I hear that there's a hospital that's going to cost 56 million euro. I think it's a lot. It's a lot of money for a hospital. I don't know what they are going to put in there, but the problem we have in Ghana is that when these technocrat hospital, most of the equipment in a rich hospital, you are amazed what kind of machines they have in there. They have like the Rolls Royce of every machine. Right? And it comes in and they don't even know how to use it, or they don't even use it properly. Or most of the times it just sits there and doesn't work. I'm hoping that 56 million euro for a hospital we're gonna have our money's worthwhile. Because like I said, 56 million is a lot of money for a hospital. I don't know what machines they are trying to put in there. I don't know what sort of theater they are trying to put in there. But in general, new hospitals are good news in communities.
Right.
The issue with beds, okay, is that we run a system where somebody can be, and there is an on-call nurse,
Right.
okay, a nurse that come home to basically look after you. The reason they do that is it rotates the beds. When somebody goes to an operation and he's been assessed, you give birth in America, and in 3 days you are allowed to go home.
Right.
Then if there are issues, there's the nursing part of it is taken care by nurses that come home and basically visit you. We need to look at that service. We cannot be letting people be in the hospital for minor injuries and minor surgeries and minor illness, and they are just lying on bed.
Right.
Some people can't afford to pay, and because they have not paid the hospital keep them in the hospital until they pay. I mean, that's why we never have enough beds. So we need to change the system. The system where people just lie on bed for minor surgery and minor illnesses should stop.
Let me interject with an interesting question. You're hoping to be president. I always go back to that because as you interact with us here, who knows what might happen tomorrow. Assuming the NPP, what are you talking about now? What are you going to do about it as Kojo Poku, president of the land?
Those are my thoughts. Most of the things me and you discuss are my thoughts. So those are things that I want to do something about.
Right.
So I think, there's a lot of nurses that do not have work, and we hear this all the time, right? The point is, why can't we have community nursing? Why can't we have the on-call nursing like they have in the US, where we have agencies that have people go to the hospital?
Easier said than done, Kojo Poku. Easier said than done. You can say it, but the implementation, look at our system. I mean, I want practicality, not just rhetoric.
No, a lot of things are easier said than done, my brother. But the point is about how well you implement it. We have National Health Service.
Right.
We have the National Health Insurance. We have the National Health. You give your address, put in a system. A nurse come home to look after you. How is that easier said than done? I mean, these are things that, look, we tend to avert our mind to things that we've not done before. We say that it's not possible. But then people travel 6,000 miles or 6 hours to the different direction, and they go through that. Everybody in Ghana who goes to give birth in America don't stay in the hospital more than 3 weeks.
Right.
Don't stay more than 3 days, even if it's a cesarean. Okay, you go home and you recover at home. If there is nursing, there is a nurse that comes home to look after you.
Okay, so right, that would be the move. Let me just tie in this health bit and let's proceed with the papers because it's also tied to the health discussion we're having. Some have called for COVID-19 restrictions in Ghana to be eased with protocols, the testing regime, that a lot of Ghanaians have been vaccinated, that even in terms of the testing and all of that, they ought to be eased. Mind you, our borders are still shut. How do you respond to these calls? Do you agree or disagree?
Well,
and also don't forget, my apologies, that it's also affecting business in myriad ways. I mean, once these restrictions...
let's get the numbers of the total number vaccinated. The total number vaccinated in this country is not as high as we think it is. It's not.
It isn't?
No, it's not. I don't think we've gone more than 50% of the total vaccinated population vaccinated. I'm not sure, but the last time I checked, we've not done more than 50% of all the total.
The last time I checked, we had done over 8 million. And of course, we are looking at a target of about 20 million.
Exactly. So we've not done half of that. Okay, so if you're looking to vaccinate 20 million and only 8 million vaccinated after we've started this about 5-6 months ago, it's still not a good number. But yes, I agree when people are calling for the review because some of the things that really ask you for anything. Right. People don't wear the mask as they used to. Yesterday in the news, China is having a wave of COVID coming in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They've had to shut down one of their cities, sort of. They've shut it down.
Yes. So they are having. I think that we should tread cautiously. COVID is there, but just that in Ghana, even before vaccination, our immune system coped with COVID much better than the Western world did.
Right.
So with vaccination, it's helping better. What we should guard against is another wave of a new variant. Okay, if we are not careful to the autumn and winter months, and then we have the visitors coming in December, they will probably bring a lot more. So we should not put our guard down 100%. But we should guard. The summer months are okay for us. Going into the autumn and spring, the autumn and winter months, then we should be careful on how we go about this.
Right. Let's look at some more stories. Why deputy speakers can vote, Supreme Court explains. They've given their ratio decidendi, the reasoning behind their decision. And the Supreme Court has held that the 1992 Constitution does not place any restriction on for determination. It's expansive, of course, over 29 pages of documentation. And a lot of people have pointed to gray areas, problematic areas, loopholes in the Supreme Court's ruling. I don't know whether you've read the ruling, but you're reading around it. What is your take? Does this create more problems than exist?
We run a system. You see, look, we should accept the system we run.
Have you read the reading?
I've not read
the ruling, Kojo?
I've not read the ruling. But
Okay,
I've not read the ruling. But let me put it to this: when the Supreme Court rules, it's final. You can go for a review, but it's hardly the Supreme Court overrule itself. Okay, so the Supreme Court will rule. They are more than free to go for judicial review. So when people say they are pointing gray areas, where is the gray areas? It's like going in.
Actually, Kojo, that is why I was asking whether you had read yesterday, for example, yesterday night, right here. I had quite a discussion with big wigs when it comes to parliamentary affairs, from the academics to the people in there. There are some gray areas. There are problematic areas, but of course the ruling and mind you, the fact that there's a 7-0 ruling by the court also doesn't mean it can't review itself. That has been done time and again in history.
But what I'm saying to you is that all these academics who are reviewing and saying there's a gray area, the minute the Supreme Court has ruled, those gray areas, we have a system where we've put a group of people, call them the Supreme Court judges, right? Everything we don't understand, we take it to them and they tell us what it should be.
Right.
Now, after they told us what it should be, it becomes law. So I don't see where academia will sit and say, oh, there are gray areas. Gray areas by who? The Supreme Court, who is the highest decision-making body of the land when it comes to law.
So that on the back of exactly what I've said, the Supreme Court, not just in Ghana, there are landmark decisions in other jurisdictions, and in the United States, there are many of them that have had to be overturned because the same Supreme Court, after many years down the line, decided, no, we actually erred, and we review that Parliament has to fashion out around the ruling how it is going to implement the Supreme Court's ruling in the House of Parliament, because then it goes back to them and they are going to have to work it out. That's the interesting bit. But let's move on from there. In the coming days, I'm sure we'd find out how Parliament is going to approach this from the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. In sports, Asante Kotoko, Krobia Asante Kotoko, my very own, on top with 44 points. Aduana Stars following with 36 and Great Olympics with 35. Heart of Oak in 6th position. Ghanaian Times newspaper, I want us to take a quick swipe at this. 9 University of Education Winneba students killed in road crash at Esuboi. Guess what? They were returning to school after, the entire UTAG strike and all of that. In different places, we've heard of these, and unfortunately, they have met their untimely demise. The carnage on our roads is becoming something that we talk about much.
Well, it's unfortunate. And let me use your media to say condolences to the people of Hohoe as well, because our MP, Peter Mewu, Honorable Peter Mewu's people also suffered some really bad accident. And I think some of his main party officials, executives, suffered various injuries, and some died, which is very unfortunate that we are having this story coming in last night. I went to a wedding in Hohoe on Saturday, and we hear such bad news. Your heart beats and your heart skip a beat.
Right.
And it's unfortunate. But we are hoping that people will take care on our roads, and the roads should get better. Now, look, year of roads, but are we really seeing the roads? That's what I want to ask.
Year of roads, but are we seeing the roads? To wrap with the Ghanaian Times news paper, there is this bit as well. Let me just get to it. Danger looms at Wager Reservoir as residents live in fear due to illegal sand winning. In the course of the news this morning, we're talking about a site in Paga, historical, wonderful site, going waste because it's a touristic landmine or mine, gold mine. I should rather allow illegal practices all across the country. Sometimes it beats my imagination how we are running this country. And I'm not talking about any political party, but sometimes it gets you thinking, like, we can't seem to get anything right. I don't know whether you get what I mean, but people can do things that are purely illegal and get away with it, act with impunity.
My brother, it's not about the politicians, though. It's about they are not the problem.
They are part of the problem. If not the greater part of it.
They are part of the minute. They are part of the minute problem. The guy who is sitting, look, the agencies the department supposed to be doing their work are not doing their work. You see, look, in general, people just don't do their work. Why you say, look, but it's the only way we can move forward as a country. We should exert accountability. People just don't do their work. Remember that civil servants don't do their work. Government workers don't do their work. It's simple. Just that, look, it makes it easier to blame the politician because he's the one that will come and tell you, vote for me, I'll do X, Y, Z. But the person sitting there collecting monthly salary don't do their work. The sun whining thing that you talk of, yes, they do. Have they not seen
I mean,
it?
likely there are chiefs, assembly people. Those are the grassroots who are in cahoots with these people. And I agree that we are a great part of the problem. But you see, Kojo, you've lived in different parts of the world. When you leave the ordinary person, wherever the person is on the planet, and you have rules that are not implemented, everyone will take advantage of. I've heard of similar stories across the country. In the end, who suffers? We all suffer, and government will come and say, oh, this and that. It is government that has to act, and if you don't act, then I don't know what to call you. But the rules and enforcement is done by who? It's done by the same people I'm saying don't do their work. Let me give a typical example. When there was a blast in that town in the mining area, Apiate, the person that was their work. Now everybody's blaming the politicians. What have they done? Right.
In the assembly that we talk of, wager. Look, let's go there today, me and you. I have time. If you have time, let's go. We'll go there, go to municipality, and you hear all the excuses that comes out. People just don't do their work.
Right. Let me tie some loose ends of stories very quickly. Tied to that bit about as motorcycles alone killed 205. Again, motorcycles real, high in terms of the statistics. Like I said, a decrement of almost 10%. But you look at the numbers and it's still a great cause for worry. But let me link two stories in the Daily Guide and Republic Press. Bagbin blows $1.1 million on Dubai trips. And of course, there's the politics of it, when we legislature and what their benefits are and their travels that are not being spoken of, to be fair. There's also wounded Bagbin runs amok. It has to do with the Supreme Court's ruling and all of that. What is your current take on the Right Honourable Bagbin, Speaker of Parliament, and his penchant matter? What is your take?
Well, that's what we started off with. We are spending 56 million euro to build a hospital, but that hospital will not be equipped enough to look after our politicians. They will always fly out of the country. That is a problem. Like I said earlier, if you go and look at the equipment sitting idle in the rich hospital, it will blow your mind. But guess what? They are not using it and they are still flying out of the country for independence. Why are we still traveling out of the country for medical attention?
Right.
His Excellency, the Speaker, Babing, has been in Parliament for how many years? What has been his contribution? He's been a minister. He's been so many things in politics.
He's the longest serving member of Parliament. Exactly. Even before taking up this bit.
What has been his contribution to our medical sector that we have to fly him out of the country for assistance? What is it?
And I'm sure the people of Nadoli Kaleo might have something to say, even if...
Well, that's my problem. What I'm saying to you is that we don't, even today, I'll give you an example. You go to MedLab, Lancet, and all these laboratories. There are some tests, when they take off you, they send to South Africa for the test to be carried out there.
Right.
Why?
Good question. Good question, Kojo. Let me just wrap with some headlines. We're wrapping up. It's Constitution 7 FM, and 70% of home buyers are local residents. The first story I read was from the Daily Statesman. This one is per grader in the BNFT. There's also 80% of Ghana Stock Exchange trading done by foreigners, going back to the point you were making. But thank you, Kojo, for joining us this morning. Always refreshing. And do have a good one. We'll take that wager tour at some point. We'll go to wager at some point.
No, upright.
Thank you, Kojo. Do have a wonderful day. Up next, we have all the sporting action from over the weekend that is hitting your screens shortly. Do stay. After that, the big stories.
A rainy night at Baba Yara Sports Stadium, and it rained goals as the Porcupine Warriors defeated Viviane Gold Stars by 5-0, and House of Oak suffered a loss as they dropped to mid-table in the ongoing Ghana Premier League season. And in the Premier League, Cristiano Ronaldo scored his 807th career goal as Manchester United defeated Tottenham Hotspur 3-2. In the Premier League. We've got these and many more here on the AM Sports with me, Muftau Nabila Abdullahi. First, Sam Adams, a former midfielder of Kumasi Asante Kotoko, scored the only goal as Ediana Stars defeated Accra House of Oak 1-0 in Ndoma. The defeat means House of Oak is now 15 points behind leaders Kumasi Asante Kotoko. And also, Asante Kotoko have now extended their lead at the Premier League table to 8 points after defeating Bibiane Gold Stars by 5-0, whilst Brekum Chelsea also won 1-0 against Kerala United.
Joseph Addo, the regular goalkeeper for Ibiana Stars. Header is on! And Inusa scores full marks. Nuruddin threads a pass.
Foot, hitting one.
Yes, Prince Aqua. Lovely pass laid through by the youngster. A chance for Ibiana Stars! That is the goal!
And we look at the replay here, Prince. Just when he got the ball, he had already measured the post. He's not looking at the goalkeeper, but just look at where he blasted the ball. Down the corner, and Richmond Ayi beating.
Here's an opportunity. What a drive! Ayi completely beaten from that thunderbolt.
It was a giveaway from Fatau. Lost the ball completely and passed to with a series, but look at that venom.
Adam. Enterprising shot on target. Oh my word!
Accra House of Oak 15 points behind leaders Kumasi Asante Kotoko. However, head coach of the team, Samuel Bodu, insists the title race is not over yet. For his opponent on the March Day 20 Ghana Premier League, Ben Zola, he says that he's building what he described as a Savagefo project that will ensure that they do not lose matches in Ndoma.
No, it's not yet over. This football, sometimes you could see the boys, they did well, they play well, but it didn't score that chance. And then the goal that they score is not a chance that they got it and they punish us. But boys didn't try, say, mobile fight, say, we cancel the goal and come back to winning way. But it's quite unfortunate, say, we always, your training, these are the mistakes, yet me identify, you bet me, I am Wojima. Yes, 1 day or 2 days. It takes a matter of time. Say, bet me, are working on the attackers for their finishing. So, you create a chance there. I think, say, it will be the problem for the technical, but individual brilliant, the courage, and the composure. No, we need to talk about it so that it goes to bet me about.
Now, where a gamer, Umisi Sule Mutari, of course, over the last 4 or 5 matches, Sule is very instrumental. One more be well Lusuaha, a game out for the year.
Although Obiano Abagas or Sule, I want the team and actually the type of gamer Oba, and that's the contribution towards and I say, mixing our bit like I say, Fino. But all the same, the boys did well, but the luck is not on our side, and with tactically, we have to improve on our tactics so that we can bounce back.
And let's hear from the head coach of Kumasi Asante Kotoko, Prosper Nathan Ogum, who said that his boys were very disciplined and confident in their game against Bibiane Gold Stars. His opponent, Michael Osei, a former midfielder of Kumasi Asante Kotoko, said the Porcupines were just too much.
The performance was okay. We were able to keep the ball. We were able to create the spaces. They came too high up on us some of the times. Left a lot of spaces behind. So I'm okay. I mean, playing against Gold Stars, a very good side. The determination, the discipline, the confidence with which they approach this game.
Let me congratulate the Kotoko team. I think they have done well. I mean, with such a scoreline, I mean, they gave for the team because they were not bad. My boys was not so bad that we should consider 5 goals. But all the same, sometimes when a game like this, I mean, we can learn a lot from it. and then move on, and then do better in the next game.
Yeah, you talk about learning a lot and doing better in the next game, but what then did you pick from this game that you think your team needs to improve on?
I think defensively we were lacking a lot of concentration, you know. Yeah, so and then the pitch was very wet, and then we couldn't. They should see such a goals. It's very painful. It's very, very painful. But I will not do a blame game. We have to go back and then work very hard and make sure the next game will go well for us.
Well, thank you for staying with us. This is the AM show. It's time for our big stories. And we get into COVID-19 and why some people feel the restrictions ought to be lifted. In Austria, in Nova Scotia, in Canada, in recent days, they have been lifting some restrictions. But what is discussion? We have quite a number of guests. But let's take a look at our dashboard to get a picture of the current statistics so far. Now, you would notice that we have a total of some 716 confirmed cases, out of which recoveries or those discharged sum up to 159,112. When you look at the death toll, it stands at 38.1% being in the middle somewhere. So there's the female, which is 42%, and then there is a male, which is 57%. When you take a look at the new cases, there are 23, and so 23 currently, and active cases summing up to 159. A quick look on top, 90,550. The Ashanti region with 22,292, followed by the Western region with 8,323, Eastern with 7,034, Volta 5,973. Next is the Central region with 5,402, and the Bono East region. This is important because of the conversation we're having and whom we're going to speak to, with 2,966. That is the nature of start engaging our guests now, starting with Dr. Fred Adomako Boateng, Bono East Director of Health. Dr. Adomako Boateng, a very good morning to you, sir. If you could unmute, I'd be very grateful so you can join the conversation. All right. We'll try to get Dr. Fred Adomako Boateng back. And I was going to start with him from the standpoint of the numbers in his region as Bono East Director of Health, just about 6th or 7th in there on the log. Doc, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us on the AM show.
Good morning.
Thankful. We're grateful that you've taken the time to join. How do you react to your being in the top half of the regional breakdown when it comes to COVID-19? The numbers are still a bit high in the Bono East region. Quick reaction.
Okay, so if you look at our geographical location for Bono East, all the factors, that's explanations. For example, if you look at Techiman Market, it's one of the largest in West Africa, where we have virtually everybody in a sub-region coming to trade. And on note to a lot of people, we have a lot of people coming from Greater Accra region and Ashanti region to that market. That is one. The second one, and you know where the peak or the epic center of the COVID has been at Greater Accra and Ashanti region. You have what we call the fish and the yam markets there. And then you have people, traders from all over the country, especially from Accra and Kumasi, coming there to engage in their trading. The second one is also, you look at Bono East is one of the food baskets for the country.
Right.
And you have people from Accra, Kumasi, to come and stay there, some for 2 months, just to trade in maize.
Right.
Before they go back to where they are
It's a trader's hub. It's a trading hub, basically.
Route from Kumasi to Nkranza South. So if you look at where our cases have been, like the epicenter for Buno East, you can really allude to why we are having those challenges coming, coupled with other challenges that we are having in terms of adherence to the protocols that we have been discussing. These are some of the factors that has contributed to us being in the first half of the regions.
Right. You just spoke of, and we'll get to why some people feel the restrictions ought to be to the protocols, which you just made mention of. What is it like in your region? Has it fallen down to zero? What is the latest statistic you can share with us?
We have virtually kind of go back to the pre-pandemic scenario.
Wow.
Nowadays, I think for those of us who are wearing the mask, we are the abnormal one, gone to the de facto kind of not adherent to the protocols that have been put in place. That is really the reality on the ground. And then I think there are a lot of reasons why this is happening. And I think as we go in further, it will come to light.
Walk us through some of those reasons, please, if you can.
For the past week, 2-3 weeks, you know what has been on the airwave. Basically, is to talk about yield. What is not important is virtually it's not on the news. So you can see where the discourse has been in terms of the political and the media landscape. And then the other people are also saying that, look, do you imagine, can you really think about last few years, hand hygiene, social distancing, and these were the issues that people are really coming up and say, look, I think the trajectory has changed, and then we will have to get back to our, that is the belief, that is what actually people are, attitudes that people are putting. And I think that has actually eaten into people to say, is COVID still around or not? These are some of the reasons why you can see that people are really going back to their normal behavior.
Let me ask you this. The restrictions that we have imposed from the executive instruments, the lockdowns, the wear a mask or you vaccinated, there will be certain repercussions and all of that. When you look at the basket of measures we have adopted to combat COVID-19 thus far, how efficient and how effective do you feel they have been?
There is impact, especially for the Delta wave, when Bunois were declared as an emerging hotspot. And then the regional minister declared COVID as a regional security for us. And when we started, the security forces leading the campaign for the adherence. And our attention really were in our 3 hotspots, especially Techiman Central, Nkranza South, specifically Nkranza Town itself, and then Pru East, JG. And most these districts, the peaks were also in 4 national security for us. And the security went on, for want of better word, rampage. And people started adhering. It was like the magic bullet, the silver bullet. You could see the correlation between the adherence to our cases coming down. And that is when we saw, wow, they are here. And then I saw these were tried and tested having so much impact.
Right.
And not only us, you can also look at the international community, especially when we were touting for mass vaccination and the UK and US started the campaign. And then they neglected the adherence to these mask hand hygiene. You saw what happened there. So you could actually correlate the limiting of the spread of the virus. So they were really, really effective for us from where we were sitting.
Interesting dynamics that you have, given us. Member of Parliament for Empraeso, and also a proponent for the easing of some of these restrictions. It's interesting, just to fashion out my question, Senator Malcolm Roberts, Australian senator, cured the entire world of COVID in 48 hours. We hear no news about COVID anymore. That sort of runs along with your proposition that we ought to be looking at, relaxing the measures because we know of the economic impact. Why do you think we have got to the point as a country where...
Thank you very much. And let me say a very good morning to our viewers. I think my proposal has to do with the COVID testing regimes at the airports.
Right.
When you are coming in, you are required to do it is a bit of a border. And that is why I'm proposing that the government of Ghana, through the Ministry of Health, reviews the COVID testing regime at our ports and relaxes it a bit. Whilst we have eyes on coronavirus, it's important for us to also look at the effect of some of these delays or the effect of some of these measures on trade testing regimes. Countries that were heavily hit by coronavirus are today relaxing their testing regimes. I mean, if you were to travel to the UAE, if you were to travel to the UK with your COVID vaccinated certificate, I'm not too... I feel that the burden on... I mean, I traveled out of the country. I returned somewhere last week, and the level of talking, I mean, by Ghanaians and speaking to a lot more people, you realize that people increasingly become frustrated when you have to go through within... Right. Today in our country, the government must be commended. A lot of things are being done. Ghanaians are getting vaccinated. And for me, it is something that we ought to consider and relax the regime in our country.
Okay. So just before and let me say a very good morning. Doc, thank you for joining the conversation.
Yeah, thank you and good morning.
Great. I'll be with you shortly in just about a minute. But back to you, Davis. I just want to find out. So what specifically, in terms of the airport protocols, the checks, which specific ones are you targeting? What is your alternative? For example, is it a 48-hour thing? Is it that when you can show proof of vaccination, we shouldn't, take you through that process? And are you willing to push this?
Yes, if you're able to show proof of vaccination, you've been able to show that you are fully vaccinated from the virus, I do not think that you should be allowed to undergo the 48-hour testing, PCR test.
Shots, because now in many places booster shots are being given. Or is it just 2 shots or 1 shot, depending on what you're taking? Just to clarify.
Somebody who takes a booster certainly would have gotten the full vaccination. For instance, I have taken the booster. It means that I've gotten 2 shots of the AstraZeneca, and I've gotten an extra one, which is the booster. So for such a person, I mean, somebody who is fully vaccinated, there are people who are not fully vaccinated, but they are required to undergo a PCR test before entering our country. If the person is able to prove using a platform created, the Travel Safe platform that has been created, and the facility is able to prove that indeed the person underwent such testing at their facility, antigen test at the airport.
Okay.
When that done, is going to ease the tension and is going to allow a lot more people to come into our jurisdiction. My third proposal is that, especially at the land ports, Aplao and other places, government must consider reopening these borders and also to put in some testing regimes myself.
So you table this in Parliament. When can we look at seeing you push this forward in Parliament? Very briefly on that. So I bring in Dr. Kumar.
Well, the discussion is ongoing. I've spoken to the chairman of the Health Committee on this matter, And hopefully I'll meet with him tomorrow, who's responsible for a discussion on such subjects.
Can we expect you to table this this week in Parliament?
It should be possible, but I really would want to engage them more on the subject.
All right. Hold for me. Let me bring in Dr. Patrick Kumawaje. Thank you for your patience. There are a lot of Ghanaians traveling into the country who have expressed worry about all the protocols they have to go through and test this and show this vaccination, and have eased restrictions. In Nova Scotia in Canada, they have eased restrictions. When you look at the UK, for example, Dr. Kumawaje, all legal restrictions related to COVID-19, including required masking in public and self-isolation following a positive test, requirement to wear masks outdoors in public, and relaxed rules on gatherings, including reopening nightclubs and lifting capacity limits. So I'm putting together two things. One, the testing regime and show you have tested at the airport, and even the masking regime. Have we got to the point where we ought to be lifting or lowering some of these restrictions?
Good morning to MP from Five. Yes, I think we need to look at it.
Doc, my apologies. If you could just speak up a bit. I'm struggling a bit to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Better. Thank you.
What I'm saying is that they've been asked to do a comprehensive review of the restrictions, which we are working on. I'm sure that once the report gets through and the National Task Force approves it, those reviews will come. So it's not as if nothing is going on. But
when did this team start work? Is it just recently?
For the past more than 3 weeks now.
Okay.
About 3-4 weeks we've been working. 3 recommendations we put before the appropriate authorities, and then these things we take. Mind you, whatever restrictions are covered by an EI, so all these things have to go through the necessary process. Good. But in lifting your restrictions, which I believe that it's time to lift some restrictions, you need to look all the nations you mentioned of having removed conventions. Some of them have more than 80% of the eligible population vaccinated. So that's one. And then, of course, ability to enforce and all those things are areas. Then the risk. We've been here before. The only difference now is that we've been a place where we were very low and then first spiking to 1,200 a day. The only difference is that the proportion fully vaccinated and who have received vaccine has been having received at least one dose. Okay, so and 35% fully vaccinated. So these are all classes that we can look at, and that's how we are looking at. So we are not only looking at the airport testing, etc. We are looking at mass land border recommendations. When you open, what do you do? These are things that when you open, what the risk do you face? These are all things that we're going through, and then we'll make the necessary adjustments as and when.
Right. So, you
mentioned there's a lot going on. It's not as if nothing is happening. So, transportation, airlines, etc. A lot of those things happen periodically. So, but I believe that there will be likely to be a very comprehensive review very soon.
Right. Now that you've made mention of this, committee or task force or group that is looking at our COVID-19 dynamics, so we see where we can relax this or, expect to get anything from your committee.
We're just going to go through the necessary meeting, the necessary groups to ensure that those changes are appropriate, and then we will look at that. So I don't think it will take too long.
But do you have any timeline? I mean, what are your expectations in the next 2 weeks or 1 month?
Listen, we are in a dynamic situation. We are looking at a vaccine coverage. That's why we did the NID for 5 days to vaccinate about 2.1 million people. 50% of the population vaccinated. You don't have the same context here. Okay, so we are trying to push the vaccine up, and then but even when they are removed, we need to continue tracking vaccination seriously so that we reduce any risk. Should there be any you see what's happening in Hong Kong and other places. So it is not what are the other remedial measures that we put in place in lieu of those restrictions. Those are removing those restrictions. So that's exactly what we are there. I don't think it will take too long for some recommendations to be.
Do you foresee? Do you foresee? Sorry for coming in, but do you foresee very briefly on the bit about our land borders still being shut? looking at what information you've been getting, we could open the land borders?
The land border is a major part of the discussion that we are making. We are looking at. Everything is on the table.
Okay.
And I'm sure all that will.
It's a major part of the discussion.
Opening, the testing, etc. These are all things that we are looking at. If you test, how do you manage? These are all. It's not as simple as see how we can manage it. What is the risk profile?
All right.
If you open up without testing, what is the risk? If you open with testing, what are the management implications? These are all areas that we need to look at for these decisions to take place. It's not as straightforward as
Davis Ansah-Poku, Member of Parliament for Mpraeso, and you are pushing this in Parliament as well. Thank you for your time. Dr. Adomako Boateng, just to be fair, I will give you some 30 seconds. What are your wrap-up comments on this? What is the way forward? What do you want to see?
Okay, so thank you for... So let's look at the figures we are having. Let's look at the dynamics. So when we're testing within 48 hours, we are looking at the incubation period, at least. When we're testing at the airport, other areas, we had reasons for doing that. Let's go back.
Go ahead, just wrap up. It appears we're having a problem with the connection, but I just wanted him to sum up there. All right, so that has been the discussion on COVID-19 and whether or not we're ready to lift restrictions. We take a break, but when we return, as promised, we're going to be looking at the Supreme Court joining the conversation. We also have Samson Ladi Anyenini, our very own, joining that conversation on Joy 99.7 FM. Professor Ekweku Asare, a KPMG, Professor of Accounting at the University of Florida, will also join that all-important conversation. It's a simulated broadcast or a simultaneous broadcast that we're bringing you this morning. That is up next, right after the break.